What if there was a safe space for you to explore artificial intelligence? What if there was a team of friendly professionals waiting to help you examine what you can do with AI in your courses? Welcome to the world of what if.
My name is Tanya Goldberg, as Sierra mentioned, and I am an instructional designer here at the Center for Online and Continuing Education. So today we're going to talk about inventing course readings with AI. I adapted this idea from a book that I read called AI Hacks for Educators. The authors of this book offered a solution to the unique challenges that writing and language courses have because their content is language and writing, which large language models are very good with. So the solution that they offered was to go ahead and create some type of course reading or content that was unknown to the large language model. I thought this was an amazing idea, and I really wanted to know how this could work with other disciplines, since here at COSI we work with all different types of professors. So I went to the ChatGPT and I asked it to help me with this question, and it gave me a whole list of different use cases by discipline. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the components of the prompt that was provided in this book. We're going to kind of relate it to a prompt framework called RTF. We'll talk a little bit about some benefits and challenges about creating AI readings or content. And then we'll get into the use cases. So to get started, we're going to look at the sample prompt, like I said, that's provided in the book, and we're going to talk a little bit about this framework. But before we get into that, I'm sure many of you guys have heard about prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the process of creating and refining instructions so that your GPT provides you with the best output. And within prompt engineering, there are prompt frameworks. Prompt framework is creating those instructions. It's basically guidelines to create those instructions and provide context to your GPT. And the one we're going to talk about today, RTF, is role task format. We'll kind of look at the prompt and compare it and show you the sample prompt so you could understand what role, task, and format is. So beginning with role is going to be the character or the persona that you want your GPT to adopt. And looking at the sample prompt, we see here it says working as a graduate teaching assistant in charge of your own composition class. Then we'll look at task. Task is going to be the objectives or the actions that you want your GPT to undertake. So this could be anything as with refining information, getting information, generating content, problem solving, any of those type of things. So looking at the sample prompt, here it says, create a detailed case study about divisional Zyblocks, a physical product used between fingers to alleviate arthritis. Although this is a fictional product, you will write it as if it were real. You'll create any details, including key players and conflicts that happened along the way to FDA approval. And finally, format. Format is going to be the medium of communication that you want your GPT to communicate, and also how you want your output to be formatted. So this could be the tone, the style, the length of pages, anything like that. Looking at this sample prompt, we see that it says, make sure the case study is at least 5 pages long, adding enough embellishments and details that it reads realistically. And then ending the case with a pending step being marketing to the public. So these are things that you want to keep in mind when we break out to play, when you're going to create your prompts, and in the future if you're going to create any type of prompts. All right, so we'll go ahead and we will get into how do you actually create these AI-generated readings. Well, you want to begin with a prompt. You could use a framework like I just showed to you all. There are a lot of prompt generators out there, prompt optimizers. So that's really where you want to begin. Then you're going to take that prompt and you're going to input it in some type of GPT tool. That could be ChatGPT, that could be Microsoft Copilot, Claude, whatever your preference is. I would recommend using Microsoft Copilot. just because that is what our university supports, and it's a walled garden, and anything that you input in there, it's not training, it's large language model. Okay, so next, after you've created your prompt, again, you want to take it into one of your tools and create a draft. So the first output that you get, you don't want to just take that and run with it. You want to make sure that it has all the details that you want included. You want to make sure that there's nothing in there that's incorrect and that would throw your students off. So that was part of that one, refining your output. And next, you want to kind of figure out, how are you going to use this? Will this be a supplemental reading to a textbook chapter? Will this be bringing in some type of new perspective or current events that maybe your textbooks don't focus on? And then finally, you're going to decide, how will you evaluate this? You're not going to just create a reading and give it to your students and not evaluate them in any way. So maybe it's a discussion, maybe it's some type of a reflection. And next, we'll talk about the benefits of AI readings. So to begin with, it reduces cheating because there's no external sources for students to look at and plagiarize. There's no pre-written analysis, no answers on Chegg. For that reason, it reduces cheating. Encourages critical thinking. So again, if you're bringing in a new perspective, if you're bringing in something that has to do with current events and you're having them relate it to a chapter, and there's nothing that they could go online and look at, then they're forced to kind of use their own knowledge and think critically. This also fosters creativity. When you're bringing in, current events, new things that aren't the same type of thing that they're seeing every week in the chapter textbooks and the rest of the content in the course, it helps create, foster creativity and make better conversations and whatever discussions and whatnot you have in your course. And finally, it's customizable. So maybe your textbook and all your other course content just doesn't hit on every single objective that you have in your course. And this way you could customize something directly to that objective. All right, some challenges and considerations to think about when you're creating these. Accuracy is a big one. So you want to make sure in there that you're not giving your students some false information that has nothing to do with their course. You want to make sure that it adds value to your course and that it includes everything that you want it to include. So always, refine your output. Second thing is time investment, because you do have to create the prompt. You do have to refine your draft and figure out how you're going to use it and create some type of assessment for this. Initially, it is a time investment. But in the long run, it saves you time because in semester to semester, you could just take that assignment, that reading, and put it into Microsoft Copilot, tweak a couple things, and there you have another assignment or reading. And finally, transparency. You want to make sure that you let your students know that these are fabricated so that they're not sitting there memorizing details or trying to regurgitate the information that they're reading, and let them know this is really about their critical thinking skills and analysis skills. Okay, so now we'll get into the use cases by discipline. The list that I got from ChatGPT is quite long, so we won't be going over every single one of these, but we will talk about a few of them, and I have some examples to show as well. And so we'll start with humanities. For literature, you could create fabricated short stories, poems, or excerpts. These could be in the same style of famous authors. And then students could read those and analyze them for themes, character development, and maybe writing styles. So we'll look at an example here of this one. There we go. So at the top is the prompt that I used, and I kind of use that same RTF framework. So it says, imagine you're an English professor for higher education. Your task is to create a fictional short story mimicking the style of Charles Dickens. Students will use the short story to analyze themes and character development. And then at the end, I provide me with the themes and character development to use when I need to grade the student's paper, because I'm not a subject matter expert. I didn't want to sit here and try to analyze it for themes and character development. It's probably not what a literature professor would do, but just something to keep in mind for when you are creating prompts and something that you might not be a subject matter expert in. Alrighty, so after a few seconds after putting this prompt in, it created a nice 1.5-page short story for me, a short Dickensian tale, Shadows Upon King's Court. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I'll read that first sentence. It was upon a blustery winter's eve that the grand wrought iron gates of King's Court quivered beneath a moon pale as bleached linen. And then it goes on, and it has its themes and its character development in the little short story. And at the very end, it breaks down for me the themes and the character development. So I thought that was pretty cool. We'll get back to some of the use cases now. The next use case we'll talk about is art history. So in art history, you could write about fabricated artists, movements, or works of art, and have students critique those and place them within historical context. For the STEM disciplines, we'll talk about biology. For biology, you could create fabricated research articles or other experimental findings where students will have to evaluate those for the validity and maybe create some follow-up studies. And I also have an example of this one. Okay. So for this one, again, I use that same kind of framework. It says, imagine you're a biology professor in higher education. Your task is to craft a fabricated research article for students to evaluate its validity. Ask me questions to provide me with a better output. So that's another best practice that you want to think about when you're creating these prompts, is to have the GPT ask you questions so that it can add in whatever details that it needs. Again, I did that because I'm not a biology professor. I didn't really know what needed to be added to this research article. So it went ahead and it asked me 8 questions. It wanted to know what the topic would be, the research focus, methodology, the data type, if I wanted to include any fake findings, if I wanted references and if those should be fabricated or not, the level of detail, and any common research pitfalls if I wanted to include any of those. So I went ahead and I answered those 8 questions. And again, after a few seconds, it created a fabricated research article for me. And the title of this one is The Decline of Evolutionary Traits in Contemporary Populations, an Observational Study. Provided me with a short abstract, the introduction, the methodology, results. It actually did a little table for me as well, the discussion and the conclusion, and also some fabricated references. And you may look at this and think that, oh, this is not really a lot of information. I kind of want more information. So this is when you would go in and you would have that iterative process with your GPT and ask it to add in more details or lengthen, the output. So, and then at the very end, it actually broke down what are those common research pitfalls that it included for me in that article. So that was just another example to show. We'll move back on to the presentation. Okay, so in the social sciences, we'll talk about psychology. In psychology, you could create use cases or experimental findings, have students analyze those, and then maybe discuss the methodology, the ethics, or the psychological theories that are included. For law and criminal justice, we'll talk about criminal justice. For criminal justice, you could create fabricated scenarios or reports of crime patterns, and then have students analyze those and offer solutions or theories as to why there's these crimes in these areas. For business and economics, we'll talk about business for this one. You could create fabricated case studies of businesses that are maybe facing some unique challenge, and then the student could create a business plan or offer solutions, financial solutions or marketing solutions. And finally, health sciences. We'll talk about nursing for this one, and I also have an example. So for this one, you could create patient case files. You include, any past medical history, medications, the symptoms that they're experiencing, and then have students diagnose and create like a treatment plan. So we'll show you the example for this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you my output first, and then I will show you the prompt afterwards. So I actually use Microsoft Copilot for this one because I wanted to see how it works for, professors, test it out, make sure it actually does what we want it to do. And it did a great job. I'm not going to read the prompt to you right now. I'll explain that in a second. But as you see, it created 3 completely different case files. The first one is a 60-year-old male, retired engineer, non-smoker, occasional alcohol consumption. It gave me some symptoms, medical history, test results, and then additional information. And the task, again, would be for the student to diagnose it and then create a treatment plan, including medication, lifestyle changes, and follow-up procedures. So that's the first one. The second one, female, age 28, software developer. Again, symptoms, medical history, all that good stuff. And then the last one, male, age 50, construction worker, smokes 20 cigarettes a day, heavy alcohol consumption. So as you see, there are 3 completely different case files. And I thought that was really cool. So we'll go ahead and now we'll look back at the presentation so we could see the prompt that I used for this one. So again, same RTF framework. You're a nursing professor working in higher education. You've been tasked with inventing patient case files, symptoms, histories, and test results. Students will use these to practice diagnosis and treatment planning. So again, I'm not a nurse. I didn't really know exact details that I maybe needed to add into this prompt to get the best possible patient case files. So what I used for this was this really cool tool called Prompt Perfect. Prompt Perfect is a tool that optimizes your prompts. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this and look at the other features that this tool has. Okay. So if you look over here on the right, this is the optimizer. And I went ahead and I uploaded the prompt that I just read to you all a minute ago. And it doesn't ask you any questions or anything. It just takes the prompt and it starts optimizing it. So there you could notice it started to outline the key elements of my prompt. And then it says there that it's going to include details about the format and additional guidelines. So if you notice at the very top, it's very similar to kind of the prompt that I had began with, but then it did ask in the prompt to include, these other following sections that I didn't list in my prompt. And then it also asked it to ensure that there was a range of common and uncommon conditions, that the details were realistic and plausible, and that the information provided is comprehensive. It also even included a little template for whatever GPT tool that you use to go off of. And the other cool thing about this tool is that once you have your optimized prompt, you could go ahead and just send it to the assistant, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. And once you send it to the assistant, it kind of lets you visualize what you would get, what output you would get, basically. So I sent it to the assistant. Let me actually go all the way up because I did something else here that's not the same. All right, so it sends it to the assistant, and then it actually creates something for you for the output. So if you notice here as well, it has 3 different patient case files. They were all very different from the other 3. The only similarity was that it gave me another software developer, but that's it. They're all very different details. So there we had 6 patient case files that we could use now. The other cool feature about this Prompt Perfect tool is that you could take your original prompt and put it into this auto-tune feature, and it could show you how your prompt would work in different types of models. So you could do it whether it be text or image models. Text models, it does ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, it's a whole list of them. And then the image models, it will do like Dolly, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. And so I did the little training that goes along with this tool just to see kind of how this worked. And I'm going to show you how this works. It's really cool. If you notice on the left-hand side, it starts off with this little short prompt, a cute animal flying in the sky. the prompt optimizer optimizes that prompt, creates it, gives it a little more detail, and then we end up with this cute little kitty flying through the sky. And this was done in DALL-E. And on the right-hand side, we have a short prompt that says, a cheerful dog running through a grassy field. It gets optimized, a lot more details are added to that prompt. And this one was done in Midjourney, and then we get that cute little puppy running through a field. All right. There are some other features that this tool has that I really haven't gone into, so I'm not going to discuss it, but you can create like templates of prompts and do some other cool things. All right, so we'll get back to this, and this is now our time to play. So I created this little plug and play prompt for you all to use now that we're going to get into our play session. It's very similar to the RTF framework. I just kind of changed the words a little bit in the brackets to make it a little easier. So basically in that first bracket, you're going to put whatever discipline you are in or that you want to use for this output. In that second bracket, you'll put the task. So maybe it's creating a short story, maybe it's creating a research article, whatever that might be. And then that last one is going to be, what do you want your students to do with it? Are they going to evaluate something? Are they going to be reflecting on something? And then any other details that you want included. You don't have to use this prompt. You could maybe use a prompt generator. You could try using Prompt Perfect. But I just thought that that would be a good place for y'all to start. And that is it for today.